Hey guys, it's me again. I'm talking today about fear and creativity, and I just want to get into it because what I've been going through recently in the last couple of weeks, I kind of had a hiatus where I kind of disappeared for a little while, and so I started finally gearing up towards making some more videos again. Got some little courage. Took me a while because it's really hot here and I wake up every day sweating. I think I mentioned it in the last video. But so today I want to talk about fear and creativity. For me as an artist, I spend a lot of time dealing with anxiety, a lot of time dealing with depression, crazy existential crises, wondering if what I'm doing is even right, if I'm on the right path, if I'm supposed to be doing this, because I don't know. I mean, a lot of times you wake up and you think I'm crazy, and I think, you know, maybe other people are right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I mean, maybe if I'm supposed to be doing this, I don't really understand why these things are happening, or this is happening, or why I lost this, or why I keep having issues with this. And one of the things I really wanted to share was just my experience, because I feel like I feel kind of crazy, but I know I'm just hoping that you guys out there have experienced this as well, because it's scary. And that's the thing about fear is it's a constant thing for me. I don't think it ever goes away. I wake up every day with it, and I feel like the difference between people that really learn to handle it and confront it and move through fear, and the ones who end up really accepting fear in their life as a truth. And I mean, not like it's not true, I just mean like people who accept fear as powerful in their life, accept that fear is too strong for them. They accept that fear will always keep them from where they're going, and they accept that fear is too much, and that instead fear keeps them in routine, keeps them in predictable areas of life. The difference between those two people is, and this is my opinion, but take it as you will, fear is what separates people from getting what they want in life. If you're living a life where you are stuck in a routine, where you have difficulty stepping outside of safe areas, of places where you are fully supported, where stepping outside of places where it's something other people have done, maybe pursuing ideas that have already been explored because you don't want to, rock the boat, so to speak, either in your social circle or in the world. As an artist, I feel the biggest calling for an artist is to have a voice, and to recognize that your voice is always going to be there. The desire to speak out about things and the desire to communicate and share ideas is always going to be there for an artist. And fear is something you're always going to deal with. So when you learn to, and this is something that you pick up. I'm not going to say everybody's experienced the same kind of trauma. Everybody has different versions of how deeply that trauma hurts them. You could have been neglected. You could have been abused. You could have been in a war. You could have been even if your life was very easy. Sometimes, I mean, it's easy like financially. Maybe you had a great family that was supportive, but you were poor. Or maybe you had a great family that was supported and you were rich, but but there were a few things that were kind of off limits in your family, and those are the areas that you are actually drawn to. Everybody has different versions of an upbringing, and that's what contrast is about. Contrast is about showing you, well, basically that without contrast in your life, that you're not going to really appreciate the things that you are actually being drawn to, because you don't know what it's like to be without them. Chances are, if you're an artist especially, you've gone through most of your life with a lack of experience with the things that you're trying to get. Like for me, I was neglected a lot, and I didn't have very much connection, and I didn't have very much unconditional love. And so for me, a lot of my voice and a lot of my things I'm trying to express and share with other people is surrounding that, because I've had to actually work on creating that for myself. And as a result of that process, because of the lack of that in my life, I have a deep, deep experience without it, and so I can relate to other people more. I deeply understand what it's like to be without it, and so most of my fear surrounds actually doing that, and actually voicing how difficult it is, and actually sharing those experiences, because it's scary to admit that and especially as a male, in my society and how I was raised, for a straight male to have experienced that kind of neglect, it's difficult to come out with, because it admits that I was hurt, that I suffered, that it was very deep and painful to me, and most of the time that's not something that you want to admit, especially if I were to get emotional about it and cry about it. Obviously, if you're a male, you know what that's like, and there's a lot of pressure to hide those kinds of emotions. And so fear for me has been voicing voicing how deeply painful that was for me. So one of the things I want to talk about fear is how that actually ends up kind of panning out in a practical sense. For me, fear turns into rejection and resistance. And I'll probably have some other videos where I talk about some of these words, because I hope I don't just they don't just go over your head. But resistance to me is about surrender. A lot of times it's difficult to surrender to the moment. It's difficult to surrender to new ideas and new options that challenge how I think, and challenge to take a look at the feelings that I'm having, to challenge even what other people think. As an artist, for me, bringing up ideas and talking about ideas with other people that don't agree with me it's very difficult. I have a lot of codependency issues, so it's difficult for me to bring it up without trying to make it sound like how they would be willing to accept it. It's difficult for me, and like obviously be tactful. Obviously, like that's the thing. Like there's a fine line between being tactful and being courteous and being codependent, and that's stuff that I'm learning right now. But with fear of what other people think, it keeps you from actually saying things that you really do mean, because you're constantly trying to change yourself in order to fit into other people's expectations. And so as an artist, you'll find yourself drifting towards things that other people are more accepting of. You might be in jobs where it's kind of in your field, but you're not really taking the risk that you're actually attracted to, because it's so scary that you're worried about loss. You're worried about failure. You're worried about making too many mistakes. You're worried about being wrong in front of the people. You're worried about maybe even people in your life suffering. And those are all very real fears for me, not gonna lie. I worry about people that might depend on me, and whether or not I'll let them down. I worry about whether or not I'll be able to handle the stress of going after the things that I love. And if you're going through that, if you are listening to this and you think to yourself, man, like that's what I'm going through, my biggest suggestion would be to actually go take a list. I'm a big fan of lists right now. Obviously, you're probably hearing me talk about lists a lot. But go through, make a list of all the things that you're actually afraid of happening if you go after the thing that you want. And once you've made a list of those things, go down to each individual item, and I want you to expand on it. I want you to expand and go down the trail of what ifs until you get to the very, very deepest, most simple fear. And I want you to actually sit with that. So, for instance, one of my biggest fears is financial instability. So, like for me, I would write down, okay, I'm afraid that if I do this, I'm not going to have enough money to pay for bills, to pay for where I'm living, to pay for healthy food, to even pay for extra things that I want, maybe gear for photography or gear for making music. And so I'm going to have that, right? Well, then I go down and I say, okay, so what happens if I don't get those things, right? So if I don't get my gear, I'll have to wait longer to make music or music of this kind, or maybe I won't be able to have enough gear to do certain kinds of work. And then if I can't pay the bills, I'll get behind. And if I get behind, maybe my electricity will be shut off, or maybe my credit will be ruined. Or if I can't pay the bills for the rent, I'll be kicked out. And I don't have any family, so, well, I mean, I do have family, but not all of them will be willing to support me in that way until I'm able to get work again. And so I might be out on the street. And then what if I'm out on the street? So I'm like, I keep going down this, right? So what if I'm out on the street? All right, so I have stuff, right? I mean, everybody has a little bit of stuff, but what if I have nothing and it's just me, on the street with my shoes and maybe a backpack with some clothes and like a book and like, I don't know, maybe nothing? What happens then? And that's one of my biggest fears, is literally just being alone on the street with no money for food, no place to stay, nobody to rely on, and I'll just be alone, right? And I have to sit there and be really truthful about that situation and what about it scares me. And I have to realize that after a certain point, if that's the one thing that I'm afraid of, that I have to recognize, what would I still want to do with my life? Would I want to just lay down and give up? Would I just accept that I'm now homeless and that there's no money left in the world for me, that nobody wants me, that I'm not going to have any connection with others, that I'm not going to have a value to bring to others, that and that's what really scares me. I don't know if I mean, I'm a Taurus. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart, so like I really, really like being productive. I really like working hard. I have a crazy work ethic. But the fear of not having value to bring to others is a really deep one. And a lot of times it keeps me from being productive, funny enough. I find the fear of not having the ability to impact other people's lives and to bring value into other people's lives and to have that connection and to be supported in that way is a really big distraction. It's one that constantly comes up every day for me. So take that list. Go down all the individual fears until you get to the deepest, all the way at the bottom of what that means and what that would mean for you in your life. Maybe if you have kids, you're worried about not being able to feed them. You're worried about disappointing them as a parent, as a role model. Maybe you're worried that you'll end up in a homeless shelter and maybe your kids will be taken away from you. And you have to recognize at a certain point that's always a possibility. And focusing on and really being distracted by that possibility is in a very, I don't want to seem cold and calculating, but it's not even efficient. with your time. You're going to spend a lot of time worrying about fears and the other things that could happen that you don't want to happen. And by focusing on that, you're literally going to push yourself in that direction. It's going to cause anxiety. It's going to keep you distracted from focusing on options that do work and options that take you away from those futures. And this is from my personal experience. Going down that list and confronting those fears and being present with them is going to allow you to recognize sometimes how ridiculous you might actually seem when you get to the bottom of all of it and realize that it's such a strange scenario. It's such a rare scenario. And yeah, it does happen. I'm sure there's plenty of homeless people who came from similar situations that I came from. Not gonna lie, but it's important to recognize at the core of it what it is that you're afraid of, to be present with it, to know why you have that fear, to dig into it, and to recognize that that's always going to be there. It's never going to go away. That possibility is a possibility, but it's going to leave you grateful. It's going to leave you understanding that while that is always a possibility, while it always still happen, you are always capable of finding other possibilities and focusing on those possibilities and not accepting the other ones as strong, not accepting that those fears can manipulate you and control you into sabotage. The difficult thing for me was recognizing that, so what if I end up homeless? How can I move forward from that? How can I overcome that? And it's difficult to trust in situations like that when you lose everything, that those situations are part of your path. The biggest thing for me is accepting that those fears are a possibility, and accepting that if it does happen to me, that I'll be able to work with it. Trusting in your future self is something I talk about a lot with Promise, a lot with my friends, and it's because I had such a lack of trust in my future self. I didn't believe that if I got to a bad situation that I would be able to handle it, that I would be able to come out of it, because I had such little faith in my ability to overcome difficult situations that I just expected myself to always do poorly. And that's more of like a self-esteem, and more of like a depression, and more of like a kind of a paralyzing fear. It also has to do with PTSD, I think. But recognize that if you're dealing with these fears on a regular basis, this thing you gotta do is to start small. Set small little goals for yourself, and to start keeping track and recording and writing down all the things that you've done in difficult situations that helped you to get through it. The biggest thing was establishing trust in your future self, is knowing that, looking back and recognizing, you know what, I was on unemployment once, and I waited a whole 2 years to figure out what to do with myself because I was so depressed. And at the end of those 2 years, like 3 months out, I started looking for work finally. And I don't know how I did it. I got, obviously really blessed, and I'm obviously very grateful for the work that I ended up getting. But I made it through. I got to the end of it. I found work. I managed to get enough to pay bills, and I survived, and I'm here now. And so I would write that down. That's another list, definitely. You have your fears, and then you have all the things that you've done to overcome your fears. And use that to really remind your brain, because sometimes your brain likes to play tricks on you and say, yeah, but... Sorry. Yeah, that happened, but you weren't in control of that. You got lucky. Sorry. your brain likes to trick you and make you think that you weren't even really in control of that. And so it's not real. It's not a real accomplishment. And you've got to go through the list and keep tricking your brain into remembering, yeah, you know what? I did accomplish a lot of things. I did make it through a lot of difficult times, and I will continue to do that. And I will continue to make it through difficult situations. Trusting in your future self will allow you to sit in the moment and to recognize, you know what? I see that this thing is a possibility. You might even see a difficult thing coming. You might even know, I have 3 weeks and I'm going to run out of money and I'm not going to be able to pay this or this and I'm going to have to push this back and I don't know what's going to happen if this happens. And because if all these things come together, then my life is really going to get screwed. And you got to recognize and really go back and look at the things that you've done to get yourself out of these difficult situations and remember, you know what? I've actually handled some really difficult shit. If I get to this situation, I bet I could come up with a situation. And you might even start to act proactively. You know what? This situation isn't happening yet, but I have an ability to prepare. And obviously you don't want to get so over-prepared that that's all you spend your time on. But, you know, if you know something is going to happen and you have the ability to change, trust in your future self that if that thing gets to you, that you're going to be able to handle it, to have the confidence to recognize that you're an infinite being, that you have the ability to be creative with your life, and to recognize that, especially as an artist, that you have a voice, you have a purpose for being here, that it's not going to keep you from doing it, that regardless of whatever dark circumstance you feel you might be in, that you are properly motivated to make it through, that you have trust in yourself, that you know you have it in you to come up with new ways of living, to change yourself, to become the kind of person that would make it through that dark situation. And that's the thing, we're always changeable, we're always moldable, we just have to recognize the potential for doing it, take action for doing it, commit to it, make ourselves accountable, and that's going to allow you to move through situations that strike a lot of fear and distract you from your work. Trust in your future self. And I know this from personal experience. I had so much depression and so much self-esteem issues that I couldn't see it. I couldn't see through obstacles because I was obsessed with all the bad things lining up in my life, because I believed that I wasn't I wasn't capable of making it through those situations because I didn't trust that I had it in me to change. And so I think my voice is about to give out. I just want to tell you guys, if you're going through these situations, especially if you're an artist, you are going to feel a lot of deep emotions and deep fears. As an artist, it's difficult to feel like, because most of the time, in my experience, money tends to be an issue with artists because it's a challenge finding a way to create value for others in an artistic way that doesn't compromise our values and compromise what we're trying to actually create in the world. So I would encourage you, work on those lists. If you feel like you have a lot of anxiety, I'm always recommending take a look at therapy. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor or anything like that by any means. This is just my personal experience. So I hope that this helps you. Feel free to let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, if you're an artist as well and you're going through this experience, please share your story down at the bottom. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I will comment back on every single one of you guys. I want to hear what you're doing and what you're dealing with. I also would love to talk with you. I do intuitive readings. If you're interested in that and you want to know what that's like, I've got some information at the bottom on the details. I also would love to start doing consultations. So I'm offering little written consultations for now, just because the internet here is a little wonky, and I'm having difficulty offering it for free just due to the cost right now. But if you want, I would love to email you. You can email me. I've got my email just down here at the bottom on the comment and in the details. I'd love to hear what you're going through and just write back. Little bits. I don't know that I could spend pages and pages, but I'd love to help you out if you're going through the situation. Email me at my email below, and I will talk to you guys soon. So peace out.